Request for a Surah Fatiha for those marhumin in mind, inshallah, بالخصوص شهداء بالخصوص Subra Begum, Sayyid Sadiq, Ali Sadiq, Jafar Ali, and Khanum Sultan. Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المستحيلون الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوث الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا والشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل البيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرض روحي وأرواحنا الفداء ولعن الله وعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله ولرسوله إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه وأنه إليه تحشرون صدق الله. Rediscovering Islam has been our topic. Tonight is lecture number 3. Before we begin, I'd like to, first of all, re-emphasize the point that Dr. Sadiq made about this march on December 7th, with your permission, inshallah. The unfortunate part is that dhulm in the world is increasing. Injustice is becoming a common occurrence every single day. Innocent lives are being killed, their blood is being shed. And you and I have been gifted the security and the easiness of our life here in the West. But if we believe that we are a Muslim ummah, regardless of whether or not we share in their nationality, whether or not we are Pakistani or Bahraini or Iraqi or Burmese or Afghanistani, whatever the case may be, we are still an ummah. And our Holy Prophet says that the Muslim ummah is like a human body, where if one area of it is hurting and the other areas come and rescue that area from its pain, we now have a responsibility. And no one is asking you to break any laws, no one is asking you to take up any arms, no one is asking you to stand on the front lines. They're simply asking you to march. Stand where you are and walk. And do your responsibility, especially in these days, where we remember that son of Fatima who left the comforts of his home to rise up against the oppressor of his time. And while he made his message very clear by shedding his own blood and sacrificing his own lives, you and I are spreading our message through our simple presence in these types of programs. So I humbly ask you as well, and I also re-emphasize the importance of attending such programs. It is the least that we can do. It is all that we can do in this part of the world. And in the name of Hussein ibn Ali, bring out your families, take your children, inject that sense of uprising inside of them, and let them know that this commemoration has a practical side to it as well, and that practical side are attending such protests. Our discussion, as many of you know, since day one, the attempt has been to now rediscover Islam inside of us. Sometimes we need to go back to the chalkboard and understand, why are we Muslims? The faith that exists inside of our life, is that faith real, or are we simply imitating what our parents taught us? Is there some sort of presence of the heart in our ibadat, or are we going through some motions only? And in this day and age, when Islam is being overtaken in the media, and Islamophobia is rampant across North America and really across the world, it becomes crucial for us to now question ourselves before we go out and question others. And part of that process we discussed yesterday is understanding the idea of ubudiyat in Islam. Islam says for us to be enslaved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be an abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And throughout the week that I'm with you, inshallah, up until Friday, of course, Saturday being the day of Ashura, we dedicate that entire day to the Musibat of Imam Hussein. Up until that day, we'll look at various aspects and dimensions of the religion of Islam to see where exactly do we fit in this equation. Yesterday was ubudiyat. Today I'd like to speak a little bit about balance in Islam. And part of that process is for us to understand a couple of basic fundamental concepts that for my elders are reminders, and for you and I, inshallah, are avenues of salvation. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with any ni'mats, as many of you know, there is hidden in that blessing a sense of imtihan, a test. To see how will you use that blessing, and whether or not you'll use that blessing for what it was meant to be used for. And provided that we are able to use it for what it was meant to be used for, Allah will inshallah increase that ni'mah for us. If you've been somebody who's been struggling financially their entire life, and all of a sudden you hit it big with a very big secure job and some big corporation, and now you're making a good salary, alhamdulillah, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally waits to see what will you do with this newfound fortune. And how will it make you in terms of how you are in the community. Will your walk change? Will your chest come out a bit? Well, now that confidence, that egotistical confidence now comes about? Or will it humble you? Will it make you realize that you've been blessed? And every blessing that we have in our life is such, like that. Even our 5 senses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us eyesight, for example. It's a huge blessing. Ask those who are blind. At the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us a very strict list of rules on what to look at and what not to look at. Then He gives us the blessing, and then He gives us a little manual on how to use that blessing. And provided we are using that blessing according to the manual, we're okay, we're good. But the moment we deviate off the path, that ni'mat becomes a nikmat. What was once a path for the pleasure of Allah is now a reason for the hellfire for you and I. Every blessing is like that. And the ulama tell us the biggest blessing that you and I are able to appreciate in this world is the wilayat of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. They were in individuals who sat there on the day of Ghadir placed their hand in the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen understood exactly what that day represented, but the moment that the Holy Prophet left this world, they forgot all of that. You and I weren't there in Ghadir. But we celebrated to be one of the biggest days of the year. We put on our best libas. We decorate our centers. It's a day of Eid for us. We realized that Ghadir wasn't an announcement of friendship. One salat ala Muhammad. But the day of Ghadir wasn't an announcement of friendship, it was the ending of Nabuwwat and the beginning of Imamate. And while we celebrate that day, and while we become very, very happy on those kinds of occasions, the reality is that the test that lies within that wilayat is a very difficult test. In that celebration, Allah is expecting a lot from us. And that expectation is to see what will you do with that acknowledgement of the wilayat inside of your hearts. Is it a sense of applause for us? That on the days where the Ahlul Bayt were born, we celebrate their life. On the day where they were shaheed, we simply cry for them. Is that the test? Is it enough for us to know all about the lives of a few imams and study them and leave the events of Khaybar and Khandaq in history and not apply them today? Is that enough? Because the reality is that the imams weren't sent down to us for us to simply celebrate and commemorate, to simply cry for and be happy about. They were ultimate guides for us. They still are guides for us. And they showed how to be guides of the Holy Prophet as well. Salman, there's a narration that we have in our books, that one evening our Holy Prophet was surrounded by his khas ashab. And he announced that tomorrow morning there's a meeting at this place. I want all of you to be there. And let's say this time, early in the morning. Now Salman thought to himself, look, I want to be the very first individual there with the Holy Prophet. I want to show him my eagerness to learn from him. He wakes up early in the morning. He leaves his house. He moves towards that place where the Holy Prophet said to meet. In the sand, he sees one set of footprints. He thinks to himself, Alhamdulillah, I am the first one. It's me, it's the Holy Prophet. I'm very, very excited. He gets to that place, he sees the Holy Prophet sitting there, and right beside him, Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's confused. He says to himself, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I thought I was the first one to be sitting beside the Holy Prophet, but you're already here. He said, Salman, remember, even in the footprints of Rasulullah, I follow him. His seerah, his life is something else. The footprints of Rasulullah for Amir al-Mu'mineen was an uswatun hasanah for him. We have, I'm sorry to say this, we have elevated the Ahlul Bayt to a level where we can't emulate them anymore. We believe them to be somebody who's supernatural, individuals simply to applaud and cry for. That's not the purpose of why they were sent to us. And yes, there are portions of their life that we cannot emulate. There's a reason why he's Amir al-Mu'mineen. At the same time, there are factions and dimensions of their life that for us is a blueprint for our own life. When you talk about this very beautiful ayat of Ihdina as-Sirat al-Mustaqim, there's a whole tafsir behind it. Pages upon pages in Tafsir al-Mizan by Allama Tabatabai was written about this one ayat. Pages. When we studied Tafsir al-Mizan in our school, it took us 6 months and we didn't get past to Alhamdulillah. And the majority of our time, we were stuck on this ayat. What is the meaning of this Sirat al-Mustaqim? And just to give you an idea of who we believe in, to make the faza a little garam here tonight. Alama says, what does it mean when we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on the right path? You see, there are, let me say this in brackets here. When we talk about the Quran, we talk about the fact that while there is one Quran, and we don't believe in the tahrif of the Quran, the distortion of the words. Where we do believe there's a difference is in the translation of the Quran and the tafsir of the Quran. Right? When other sects of Islam translate this Ahdina Sirat al-Mustaqim to guide us to the right path, we don't say guide us to the right path. We say keep us guided on the right path. There's a big difference. We are on Sirat al-Mustaqim, but to stay on this path is a completely different discussion altogether. Imam Sadiq says it's one thing to do an amal khair. It's one thing to keep that amal khair over and over again. What's more difficult to do is to do one good deed is to keep that deed good in terms of your needs. So sometimes when you see these translations in these iPhone apps, don't pick up any and every translation and think that it's the right translation. There are certain translations that were meant to omit the fazilat of the Ahlul Bayt from, and be very cautious of those translations. So Allah discusses this idea and says that Sirat al-Mustaqim is that path where if you do anything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are on Sirat al-Mustaqim. If you sleep the way Allah has commanded us to sleep, you're sleeping on Sirat al-Mustaqim. If you wear the libas the way that Allah has told us to wear libas, you're on Sirat al-Mustaqim. If you eat the way Allah has asked you to eat, you're eating on Sirat al-Mustaqim. If you're giving your ring in ruku to a faqir, you're giving that ring on Sirat al-Mustaqim. If you're sleeping in the bed of the Holy Prophet on Shabi Hijrat, that sleep is on Sirat al-Mustaqim. If you're ripping the door of Khaybar, you're ripping the door of Khaybar on Sirat al-Mustaqim. When the Imam Sadiq says, Al-Sirat al-Mustaqim Amir al-Mu'mineen, he doesn't say that Amir al-Mu'mineen is on Sirat al-Mustaqim. He doesn't say that Amir al-Mu'mineen is on Sirat al-Mustaqim. He says Amir al-Mu'mineen is Sirat al-Mustaqim. And every aspect of his life for us is a source of emulation. We don't need to go here and there looking for role models. Allah sent us 14 role models. Pick one and follow them. And the one thing that the Ahlul Bayt came and described for us was a life of moderation, a life of balance. They came to remove extremes from society. And one thing that our youth in this part of the world, they simply can't figure out is how to balance deen and dunya, religion and their life in general. First of all, the mafhum of deen inside of our minds is a few halal and haram, fiqh rulings, and that's it. We've reduced the Quran to be a book of jais and not jais, of yeses and nos. 500 ayat of the 6,000 plus talk about fiqh in the Quran. That's it. The other remaining verses talk about the hereafter, talk about the reality of this world, talk about our responsibility, talk about hayat and zindagi. And it's these types of gatherings, that's why I constantly tell all of you, do not take these gatherings lightly. When Imam Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, when he says, Man jalasa majlisan yuhya fihi amruna, lam yamut qalbuhu. The one who sits in a gathering where our affairs are mentioned, where the Ahlul Bayt are discussed, lam yamut qalbuhu. Their heart never dies. Yawma tamut al-qulub, on the day where hearts will die out of fear, on the day of judgment, the one who sits in a gathering where the Ahlul Bayt are mentioned, his heart will not die. have a family life to balance, you have work to balance, the community is after you. It becomes essential for you to find balance in your life. My youth right now who are out of school, entrepreneurs, building their businesses. Sometimes I hear about these guys spending 16 hours a day running their business. They come home at 9 o'clock at night, their kids are fast asleep, their wife is tired waiting up for you. And the entire week now, you go without seeing your kids. And on Sunday, let's say, you take them to Sunday school or to soccer practice, and that's your interaction with your children. All for what? All to make that extra million by the time you're 35. We completely devour ourselves into the business. In the process, our parents complain that he never comes by and says salam to me. Our wives complain that I never see him. Our kids have no connection with us. The community is asking where you are. Allah is wondering where you are. But your business is flourishing. Is it worth it? That's why we have traditions that talk about dua. Oh my God, such a beautiful topic. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the angels that do not answer this individual's dua just yet. It's been a long time since I've heard his voice. I want to keep hearing his voice. I want to keep hearing him call me over and over again. I miss the sound of his voice. Wait in terms of the jawab of his dua. He's come to me after a long time. And we go into extremes. Our sisters who are mothers at home, we devote our entire time to our children, consumed by our children. Our husband is wondering, look, what about me? Before the kids, it was all about me. Now the kids come and forget you. Make your own tea, warm up your own food. Go to your house by yourself, I'm not coming with you. Or people who are involved in the center. They open the center, they close the center when no one's here, they're here. First one's in, last one's out, completely, in terms of extreme, involved in the center. Their house is under fire, they have issues at home, they ignore all that, they're completely consumed by the center. And while that's a great cause, what's more important is that you balance your time out. And the biggest complaints that my youth have with us is that we simply don't have time. I said, right? I'm sorry. We would love to come by the center. We would love to help out. We simply don't have the time. And I'm here to tell you, do not get involved in the rat race of the West. That hamster on the wheel that's going faster and faster and faster, he stops and he realizes I'm exactly where I started. I haven't gotten anywhere. And now I'm tired, my hamster family is mad at me, and I've completely ruined everything. Is it worth it? Because the deen of Islam is not a partial deen. It's not a buffet system, as my father-in-law says, where you enter the buffet and say, okay, I like this, I don't like this. I'm going to have a little bit of this, I'm not going to have this. It's an encompassing package. Either you're into the deen or you're not into the deen. If you see right now a kid walking in and out of this hall, going in, going out, going in, going out, you'll stop him and say, look, either you're in the majlis or you're out of the majlis. This 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out, the door won't cut it. The deen says the exact same thing. Either you're in the deen or you're out of the deen. This idea of having 1 foot in the deen when you want it as a matter of convenience will not fly. The deen is not one portion of the plate. The deen is the plate itself. Everything else on it is part of the deen. Our mafhum of religion is not to be a set of rules or simply Sunday service, let's say, for a couple hours. Do what you want throughout the week, go to church, beg for forgiveness, you're forgiven, start fresh on Monday. Doesn't work that way. Islam is not a religion, it's a way of life. And the faster we realize that, the faster we can achieve balance. You can find ibadat in your books and your studies. You can find ibadat in your 9-to-5 job. There are certain things that are worship that are ma'aruf shodeh, as they say in Farsi. Right? We have ibadat, we have salat, we have som, zakat, that's all ibadat. Then there comes a time where you attach a proper niyat to everything that you're doing, and that in itself becomes your practice. When a Holy Prophet is telling Abu Dhar, attach a niyat to everything that you do, even sleeping, that sleep becomes on the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The beauty of our Ahlul Bayt is such, and specifically Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was Majmu'at Hazad. What does that mean? One salat on Muhammad wa talking about removing extremes from society and inside of ourselves. Finding a balance. Majmu'at Hazad means that he was the encompassing package of opposites in the life. That where it was required for him to be a soft-hearted, soft-spoken individual, he was. Where it was required for him to separate heads from bodies, he did. On the battlefield, nobody could even touch Amir al-Mu'mineen. That same Amir al-Mu'mineen will cry like a baby in the Janamaz at night. That same Amir al-Mu'mineen would have so much love for orphans and hug them and kiss them. The same Amir al-Mu'mineen would have no mercy for the kuffar. We have one dimension to ourselves, and we live our life on that one dimension. We're happy with the kuffar, we're happy with the mu'mineen. We're angry with the mu'mineen, we're angry with the kuffar. And that's not going to cut it. We make a distinction. Always remember that. We're not individuals who say, رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ فَمَعَذِيَا and رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ فَعَلِي. We're not. We're not ones who praise the zalim and the mazlum in the exact same breath. We make a fine line between the two. And one of the dimensions of Imam Hussein's vision was that he carved it straight in the rock forever to stay. The zalim is here, the mazlum is here. But sometimes we defend the zalim, we question the mazlum, we defend the mazlum, we question the zalim. What is this? Everything has its own place. A mu'min is balanced in his focus around the world. Find time for these things. My youth especially, those of you who are now entering your life, just recently got married, or you're a recent parent, or you're entering the work field. Literally, we have hadith that says to divide your day into 4 parts. One part is for rest, one part is for worship, one part is for your job or your school, one part is for your own entertainment, halal entertainment. And the hadith goes on to say that if you neglect the other 3 areas, your whole day will become ruined. Think about it for a second. You spend 15 hours a day at your work, there's no time for ibadat, there's no time for your family, you barely get enough sleep, but you're making good money. I hope that money puts you to sleep every single night. Because your wife and your kids are snoring by the time you come home. They're complaining, everyone's complaining. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? If at 35 you're a millionaire, maybe at 40 you can be a millionaire. With 5 years, is it going to kill you? In the process now, your wife is happy, your kids are happy, your community gets to see you, and even Allah sings your praises to the Farishta. This society doesn't want you to live a balanced life. This society wants you to be part of the rat race. There's no rush. To my youth, there's no rush. Balance your days out, guys. Balance your time out. Understand that you have responsibilities towards your own nafs and towards others. Because if we don't find this balance, like I said, these extremes will kill us. And the extremes that we see in our community sometimes are extremes, let's say, with the dunya and the akhirat. For example, I'll give you one example, one instance of these types of extremes. There are individuals who completely ignore this dunya and focus on the akhirah. They don't work, they don't pay the bills. Whenever you see them, they're on the musalla, tasbih, and they're worshipping Allah. And they believe what they're doing is a service to Islam. When our fifth Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salatu wa salam, one day he was doing some gardening, outside of his house. That might be a shock to some of you. One of his companions passed by and said, Ya Rasulullah, you're doing this, let me do that. Shouldn't you be in the masjid reading du'as, worshipping Allah? Look at the response of our fifth Imam. He says, if I was to leave the world in this state right now, I would leave in the state of ibadats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a caravan of qafla from Hajj returns and visits our sixth Imam, and our sixth Imam is asking this qafla, how was your Hajj? They say, Ya Rasulullah, it was amazing, it was life-changing, it was monumental. But there's one guy in our qafla, mashallah, he was so pious, he never left the side of the Kaaba. Day in and day out, he was right there. And the Imam asked him, what about his family and his kids? Who took care of them? Their responsibility, their roles, their food. They said, we did. Our sixth Imam says, your Hajj was more accepted than his Hajj was. We believe this dunya is to be completely forgotten. And I mentioned that 2 nights ago. Or we believe that some individuals, some of our youth, all of a sudden they find some tawfiq, their beard gets a little bit longer now, they don't watch television, they don't watch football games anymore. The same guy used to invite every Sunday for your barbecue/NFL weekends. Now all of a sudden say, no brother, I don't do that. Every second word is alhamdulillah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, subhanallah. You can't even have a conversation with the guy anymore. Right? It's awkward taqwa as we call it in the Hausa. Right? You're talking to them and I don't know, all I hear is, subhanallah, subhanallah. I'm like, what, just have a conversation with him. Right? That's awkward taqwa, we call this. It's a person who all of a sudden wakes up and says, okay, I have to be this way. That's an extreme. That's not what Islam says. Then there are those individuals who, mashallah, have assimilated so much in this society that you don't know, are they Muslim, are they not Muslim? They can't even hold on to their names in this society. Their business card has 2 or 3 names. Their actual name in brackets, their business name, I don't know. Assimilation is one thing. Forgetting about your culture is another. I can't find a job, Maulana, so I decided to kind of trim my beard. Interviews are increasing, but still no job. Now it's completely clean, my beard. I have a very nice job. Almost as if that individual who gave you that job is the one signing your check. Your razik is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You please him and risk will come down to you. By displeasing Allah to gain your risk, I don't want that risk, I'm sorry. I want that risk where with the pleasure of Allah I'm being granted this risk. Extremes exist in our society. The extreme between hope and fear exists in our society. There are those individuals who are so fearful of Allah, one small mistake, one small guna, and that's it. My life is hopeless, forget it. I will never taste the heaven. I'm going to make this dunya my heaven and deal with whatever comes to me afterwards. It's like my youth sometimes who, you go out, let's say on the weekend, and dad says, "I'll be home by 12. 12:30 hits, you're like, oh my God, it's 12:30. And you think, well, I'm already late. I'm going to get the beats anyways. Let me stay out at least a couple hours, enjoy myself, and deal with whatever dad has for me when I come home. We play that role with Allah as well. I literally have youth telling me that, look, I'm going to live my life in this world and then deal with the punishment in the hereafter. As if Allah is going to slap you on the wrist and say, go, now you go to heaven. If we understood what awaits us in the hereafter, Allah, we completely change ourselves. That's one extreme. Another extreme are those who are so hopeful that literally they convince themselves that I am committing a sin so Allah can be Rahim and Rahman towards me. It's delusional. Allah Himself tells us, right? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Start everything with my Rahmaniyat and my Rahimiyat. I'm simply giving Allah an opportunity to forgive me. They justify their sin. These 2 extremes are there. The Ahlul Bayt have taught us that in a moment's heart, if you were to measure the amount of hope and the amount of fear, it would be the exact same measurement. And the fear of the Ahlul Bayt and our fear are 2 different things. In Dua Kamal, what do we read? Sabartu ala adabik fa kayfa asburu ala Firaqik, Allah Akbar. That suppose Allah, that I can endure punishment from you, how can I endure separation from you? The fear of Amir al-Mu'mineen was doing something to create that separation between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our fear is a hellfire. And that's why when this very famous classification inside Nahj al-Balagha of the types of ibadat that exist, Amir al-Mu'mineen says there are 3 types. One is that tujar, that business individual that literally makes a deal with Allah. Says, look, Allah, I'll wake up before the sun rises every single morning. I'll fast in the dead heat of the New Jersey summer. I'll give you 20% of my earnings, but I want heaven in return. Amir al-Mu'mineen says it's the worship of the tujar, the businessman, making a deal with Allah. Which, by the way, it's ibadat, it's worship. It's not a very fair deal. Right? We turn us men baligh at 15. If Allah grants us life until 100, inshallah, let's say, 85 years of worship. For 85 years of worship, you want an eternity in heaven. I'm sorry, that's not a fair deal. Give me 85 years of heaven, I'll be happy. But no. We'll say, look, Allah, I worship for 85 years. I want eternity in return. That's one type of individual. The next one is the abd. I mean, when it says, look, Allah, I'm doing all this, but I'm doing it because I don't want to be in the hellfire. The last worship that Amir al-Mu'mineen describes is that of the ahrad, the individual that is free. Where I don't worry about heaven and hell. I don't care about heaven and hell. I worship you, Allah, because you are worthy of worship. You are layiq of that worship. If anyone deserves to be a ma'bud, you deserve to be a ma'bud. And Amir al-Mu'mineen calls that individual a free individual. A person who does the ibadah of the ahrad. That's why when Imam Hussein had the head of Hur inside of his lap, he said, Hur, your mother named you correctly. Anta Hur fil dunya wal akhirah. You are free in this world and you are free in the akhirah. The story of Hur is a very ajib story in Karbala. He is that instance of that major struggle that all of you have read in books. The minor struggle and the major struggle. He is that misdaq, that instance of that major struggle. This was a man who was one of the leaders of the army of Umar bin Sa'd. Everything was ready for him. Every fortune, every fame, every government. There was nothing that wasn't promised. And these guys would take and would have a competition to see who would be worthy of more funds from Yazid. They would literally say, Umar bin Sa'd is quoted as saying that I want you to bear witness, I was the first one to shoot the arrow at Imam Hussein's hands. I want you to go back and tell Yazid, so I have that reward waiting for me. Hur was the one who directed Imam Hussein towards Karbala. It's one thing when we can say that people left Imam Hussein's army to go into Yazid's army. That would make sense. There are people who fear poverty. There are people who fear shahadat. There are people who fear hunger and thirst. But to have an individual leave that army and come towards Imam Hussein is something else. He is that instance of hope for all of us. Hur is. The same Hur who was the first one to put tears in the eyes of Zainab bint Ali. When he stopped Imam Hussein on the way to Kufa and said that you cannot go any further, the sounds of crying from Zainab could be heard. Because she was told by her grandfather, the moment that your qafila makes a detour from Kufa, know that Karbala has already started. Hur was that individual who put tears in the eyes of Zainab. Hur was that individual who blocked the water from going to Imam Hussein's army. Hur was that individual who told Imam Hussein to move your khaymagat from Furat and move away from Furat. When all these meetings were there to kill Imam Hussein, Hur was involved in those meetings. Didn't say a single word. His sin was great. The mistakes he made were monumental. But on the morning of our Ashura, when he approached Umar bin Sa'd and said, what's going to happen today? Umar bin Sa'ad says that bodies will be trampled today. Heads will be separated from their bodies today. Blood will be shed today. You look on one side, there's 30,000 some odd individuals. On the other side, there's a handful of companions of Muhammad. And literally, he says, I was standing between the hellfire and the garden of heaven. He approached his son and his ghulam. He said that I'm going towards Hussein. And his ghulam said, you're going to go towards Hussein? The same Hussein that you blocked from going to Kufa, the same Hussein that you've made his life miserable, the same Hussein that time and time again you've made it difficult for him to set up tents. Do you actually believe that you're going to gain anywhere if you go to Hussein ibn Ali? You're going to lose this army, you're going to lose that army. Don't go. He said that I'm going and I'm going to knock on the door of the son of Fatima. And I have a lot of umeed that he's going to forgive me. When the sound of the horse of Hur could be heard coming towards the Khaymaga, Imam Hussein told Abbas to get the army ready, that we have a visitor. Hur stopped his horse a little bit away from the Khaymaga, told his son to tie up my hands like a prisoner and walk me towards my Maulana Hussein. When Imam Hussein saw this, he told Abbas, we have a Nahman today. We don't have anybody who's going to attack us. Go and see what they want. They say that Hur came and fell at the feet of Imam Hussein and said that, Mawla, I'm here for you to forgive me. He picks up Hur, he hugs him, and he says that what was once you being my dushman, you are now my akhi in this world and hereafter as well. But he said, Hur, I'm a little bit sharminda when it comes to you. He says, Mawla, what do you mean? He said, at that moment when you stopped me in Kufa, you were my dushman. I gave you so much water at that moment that even your horses were completely full. But now that you are my brother, I don't have a drop of water to give you. And Hur says that, Mawla, that's not what I'm here for. This, again, listing the mistakes that Hur made and the forgiveness that Imam Hussein offered Hur. This farsha azah is a farsha of mercy and rahmah. But it's not just lip service, my brothers. Hur begged for forgiveness and sacrificed every ounce of his life for Imam Hussein. When he's asking Imam Hussein, allow me to sacrifice myself and my son for your cause, he tells his son to go first. This is enough for our Messiah. This portion of the waqi is enough for us. When his son fights against the army of Amr and falls from the horse, he says, Ya abata adrikni, oh father, come and help me. They say Hur was in an ajib state. He was very, very uneasy. Imam Hussein asked him, what's wrong? He says that, Imam Hussein, my son is calling for my help. I need to go. He says, no. He says, no, Zaif Bab should ever go to the lash of his Jawan son. Stay where you are. Me and Abbas will go. He brought the son's lash back to Hur. And he said to Hur, now you can send your condolences. I'll say this much to you, Maulana Hussein. You were saying that no Zaif Bab should go to any lash of a Jawan son. But your Ali Akbar is complaining of a bite in her chest. Is there one person in the Maidan of Karbala who said to Imam Hussein that in your Za'ifi, allow us to bring the lash of Ali Akbar back? No, we see the moment Ali Akbar leaves this world, he calls the small children of Bani Hashim to come and help me carry my Ali Akbar's body back to the Khaymaga. So,